Good morning, everyone. This is Karma Bauman, joining you from the Denver, Colorado area. Thank you to everyone for jumping on board this morning. As you very well know, we're going to be talking more about WordPress tips and techniques on how to set up your WordPress website. This morning, we're specifically looking at how to set up your WordPress website for blogging. And by default, WordPress is set up to do this, but there's several steps that I want you to be aware of to get the most out of your blog posts. All right, a couple things before we get started. I believe the audio is okay. I'm not hearing any issues with that or seeing any issues come across. There is a form below the video on the web page that you're viewing this video on. If you have any questions or comments or thoughts or things you would like to share during the webinar, don't hesitate to fill that form in. Click send. I will see that come through on my end and I will share it accordingly or answer any questions that you might have. So don't hesitate to do that. All right, I think that's it with logistics. Let's jump into the webinar. I'm going to share my screen and we'll jump into the actual content for this morning. Just one sec. All right. How to set up your WordPress site for blogging. There are specific steps that I want you to be aware of when you're preparing to set up your WordPress website for blogging. But even before we get into that, I want to talk about why even bother with blogging. Now, I'll admit up front, I have not done well with blogging recently. I blogged regularly for probably a year and a half to 2 years. Enjoyed that process. Realized I needed kind of to take a step back from blogging and really explore how do I build my email list and how do I get the information out there. I'm getting information out there. How do I get people to see the information? So I've taken a step back a bit from that, and I'm in the process of revamping that again and starting up again. So let's talk about why even bother with blogging, and maybe even some ideas on what you might blog about. We'll look at the different types of blogs. And then finally, the 4 steps that you need to know to set up your WordPress website for blogging. And that will include setting up categories and tags. You may or may not be familiar with either of those. You will be by the end of the webinar. We'll also look at adding blog posts. So when you're ready to write something, how do you actually do that inside WordPress? And then also some blog settings that you need to be aware of when you're preparing to start blogging on your WordPress website. First of all, why even bother with blogging? Blogging can take a lot of time. Now, it's going to take more time when you're first starting out just to get the rhythm down. If you're writing articles for your blog post, just the art of writing and getting that down, it will get faster as time goes on. But you might also be doing other types of blogging, which I'll talk about in just a sec. But blogging establishes credibility. It puts you in the position as authority that there's a specific topic that you know a lot about. And I believe it's also a great way just to share and give back to your community or to those trying to attain what you're doing or to those that want to know more about what you have to share. So it's a great way to share your expertise. It also will attract your audience. So as you blog, you'll have a style, you'll have a way of communicating that will naturally attract your audience, those that resonate with you. So you won't attract everybody, and that's okay, and that's really what you want to do. You want to attract those that you really resonate with, and blogging provides a platform for that to occur. So those are the reasons why even bother with blogging. And often a question I get is, how often do I need to blog? And I don't have an answer for that really, except that however often you want to blog. Now, there is studies out there that people have done to kind of determine what's the best to keep engaged with your audience. And I would say once a week, every other week, or once a month. And it kind of depends too on what you're blogging about and the length of your articles. More recently, it's become recommended that you write longer articles with in-depth information. So an article like that you might just want to do once a month. Whereas if you're doing short little blurbs, maybe 500 words, maybe once a week. Or if you're even doing shorter than that, maybe daily. Really depends on what you're blogging about and your time and other extraneous factors that might come to that. But I would say do what you're comfortable with, and also even maybe more importantly of how often you blog is how consistent you are, and being consistent in whatever you set up with, whether it's one time a week, one time a month, every day. Consistency is probably more important because your audience becomes used to that, and so they know when they'll be hearing from you. Types of blogs. Now, oftentimes when we think of blogging, we immediately think, oh, I have to write something. And for the most part, for most blogs you see out there, that's very, very true. However, just be aware there's other types of blogs, and these other types of blogs have also become more popular recently. You have the video blog. So instead of writing something down, you're shooting a video. Maybe it's a video of a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that you put together. Maybe it's a video of a training that you're doing, so some kind of computer training that you can record your screen and put that video out there. Maybe it's a video that you're using Skype, and so you're interviewing somebody. So you're recording that Skype phone call. There's all kinds of different types of videos you can do if you want to do what we call a video blog. There's also a photo blog for those that are photographers, or those that maybe are traveling a lot and want to share photos of the places you're seeing, or just photos of, maybe you're into landscape or scenic photos and sharing that with others. You'll do a photo blog, so each blog post may be a photo, or maybe a group of photos that you want to share with your audience. There's also podcast blogs. These are simply recorded audio files that somebody either sharing their information about maybe starting a business, sharing information about how to attract clients, sharing information about how to become an artist, any topic. But instead of writing something or creating a video, they're just speaking it out and recording it, and then putting that audio clip up on iTunes, or available somewhere where it's available to the general public on the internet. And that blog post becomes an actual podcast. So they're embedding the podcast into their blog post. And WordPress also makes that very easy. There's a question out there, how do you embed a podcast into a blog post? I probably won't go into that kind of detail this morning. But if you just Google embedding podcast into WordPress blog post, you'll find your answer there. And just to kind of help guide you a bit on that, on how to do that, there's a plugin I use on one of my sites, because I'm embedding MP3s into one of my sites, and I'll have to do research on that. I don't remember the plugin specifically, but it gives you a shortcode. I think it's a plugin, or it might just be a shortcode that WordPress. It's an audio shortcode where you actually it is a WordPress thing now that I think about it. Yeah, just Google how to embed podcasts into WordPress blog post, and you'll get that, and they'll talk about that audio shortcode that you can get. And if you have more questions, email me and I'll respond to your email specifically after the webinar. That's a very good question. All right, so those are the types of blog posts. The other question I often get is, what would I blog about? And that's a good question. You want to blog about things that will keep your audience engaged and what your audience is interested in. And the answer to that is is as many different things you may know about. Which one can you get excited about? Which one are you excited about writing about or about shooting videos about? Which one are you excited about sharing about? Which one are there others out there that will be interested in that topic? So it might be your area of expertise. Maybe you're an accountant, and so you want to share different techniques, different things that have come across your desk over the years you've been an accountant that would help those around you. Maybe it's your experience. Maybe you've walked something like, even you've lost someone close to you, you've lost several people very close to you, and you understand the grieving process, and so you want to share that process with those around you and those out there that may be walking the same journey. So it's a way to help them. Maybe it's about your work experience. Maybe you've come up through the ranks, and now you're vice president of this big company. You want to share the things that you've learned, maybe how to work well with others. Maybe there's products that you want to get out there to share with the world. So you blog about your product, and you blog about other products that can come alongside your product to help your audience. Maybe you provide a service. That's kind of what this webinar is about here. And that's what I'll eventually blog about. I want to help people learn WordPress and learn Photoshop. And so my blog posts are going to be about those types of things. And I provide consulting services in those areas. So blogging about those areas helps attract my audience. Maybe you want to interview people that run businesses or different types of business or organizations, or even nonprofits, or interview people that are inspiring about a certain topic or a certain area or a certain industry, and that becomes your blog post. So maybe it's an article that you write where you actually have the questions written out and then their responses, or maybe it's a video that you do, or even a podcast work well with interviews. Maybe it's not even interviews. Maybe it's a book it's an autobiography about somebody, and you just want to share that. Actually, that's my next bullet there is, maybe it's you want to share the books that you're reading about and what you're learning from them. So basically, it's you can write about anything. It's really up to you and what you would enjoy blogging about, as well as having an audience that there's enough people out there that be interested in that topic. Now, let's jump into the steps that you need to know to set up your WordPress website for blogging. There's 4 steps we're going to go over. We're going to start with categories. Now, if you've been on these webinars or have been inside WordPress, you understand that WordPress provides you a platform by default that allows you to categorize your WordPress blog posts, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Categorizing WordPress blog posts allows you to more importantly, allows your viewers and your website visitors to easily find your information. So for example, let's go back to my scenario where I'm providing WordPress and Photoshop training. So my 2 main categories, I probably won't do it this way, but potentially just for demonstration purposes, my 2 main categories would be WordPress and Photoshop. So every blog post I do will go into one of those categories. So categories is about organizing your information, organizing what you're going to be blogging about. An example I have here in the presentation is if you're a photographer, maybe your categories are going to be the different types of pictures you take. So maybe you take pictures of landscapes and you take portraits, and then maybe you do wedding events or some other kind of events. So that might be your top level categories. Or it might be more about the type of picture. So you have a category of places. So those are the different sites you go see. Then you have a category of people, and those are the different images of you're taking pictures of people. Or maybe you're doing a lot of street photography, so that becomes a category. Or a lot of nature photography, so that becomes a category. So think about how to organize your content and how your viewer would easily find your content. What are they thinking when they come onto the website? What would make sense to them to find your content? View categories as, if you're thinking of a book, it's a table of contents. So it's the big items. It's the big topics. It's the broad categories, if you will. Also be aware that categories can be set up hierarchical. So you might have, let's go back to the photography picture, you might have a category of places, but under places, you have America, you have Africa, you have Europe. So those three places become subcategories of the top category, places. Now, starting out, you probably won't know all your categories or your subcategories, but start out at least with several, 2 or 3 or more broad categories. I would suggest 2 to 5 broad categories. You might add to that down the road. You might add subcategories to those initial 2 to 5 broad categories, but set something up prior to start creating posts, because what you don't want to do is create a blog post that is not assigned to a category. So you want to think categories before actually starting to write blog posts. Now, that won't be all-encompassing, because as you go along this blogging journey, if you will, you're going to find out that you come up with other ideas, or you come up with, you're realizing, well, I'm writing a lot about this certain topic, and it's not necessarily a category, but maybe I need to make it and turn it to a category. And you can do that after the fact. There's some other steps you would need to do along with that, but that is certainly a possibility, which is the beauty, one of the beauties of WordPress is you adapt it as you grow. And so you can adapt your website to your growth, which is one of the reasons I'm a huge fan of WordPress. So setting up categories. Let me show you before I jump to the next step how to do that in WordPress. This is just a training site that I have WordPress installed in. You're going to find categories under the posts option in the dashboard. These are categories I've set up just for demonstration purposes. So I've set up my high-level categories, or my top-level categories are history, products, and services. Then you'll notice inside products, I have a subcategory called watches. Notice the dash and the indentation of that indicating it's a subcategory. It's also true for under services. I have graphics and web design. Now, just to show you how to set this up, let's just set up another top-level category. And we're going to do this one about websites. So I'm going to enter in the name field websites. For the slug, I'm going to, if you leave this blank, it's going to default to what you just typed in above without any capitalization. So I'm just going to type that in for it. There's no parent. There's not a subcategory. If you want to provide a description, great. It might be used in themes. I'm going to leave that blank for now. Click Add New Category, and you're going to see it pop up over here on the right side. Now, let's say I'm going to blog about different types of websites, so I also want to do some subcategories. I'll just do one subcategory for the demonstration purposes. But let's say we want to do non-profit websites as one of our types of websites. This time I'm going to assign a parent to websites. Click Add New Category, and now you'll see that pop up here. So I'm just setting up categories. I'm not doing anything with them at this point. I'm just creating them. So that's how you set up categories. Now let's go to the next step. Whoops. That we need to do as far as setting up our WordPress website for blogging. We've set up our categories. We understand why we need to do that, and that is it's not required inside Photoshop, but it's highly recommended, because what you don't want is to start blogging and not have a category, because WordPress by default will assign a category. If you don't, and that category will be called unassigned. Excuse me, unassigned. So, and you don't want that to happen. So you want to set up your category. Set up your category prior to adding a blog post. The other reason to set up categories is, and there's, again, you can do a search online about this. There's discussions about, does categories help SEO? I'm a believer that it does help SEO. Maybe not directly, but certainly does indirectly. What happens when you set up categories is not only can your viewers then see all your blog posts, say, for this example, all your blog posts about nonprofit websites, it also becomes part of your URL that WordPress uses and that search engines will also use. Anytime you have your categories in your URL, that becomes a potential search term for visitors. So indirectly, it certainly does help your SEO. All right, now let's go to step number 2, which is setting up tags. Now, tags are optional inside WordPress. Categories are required, if you will, or tags are not. Categories are required because if you don't, WordPress will assign something. Tags are not required because if you do no tags, it will be left blank. WordPress won't do anything with that. So let's talk about tags. What are they? And then how to set them up. So tags are the details. You already have categories, which are your broad sections, your broad topics that you're blogging about. Tags are about the details of that. A way to look at this is if you look at your categories as table of contents, your tags is your index. At the end of the book, there's always an index on how to find different things about different topics, etc. in the back of the book. That's what tags are. Tags are the details, if you will. So for example, if we go back to the photographer idea, depending how you set up your categories, if you set up your categories with maybe the top one being places, and then you have some subcategories of America, Africa, Europe, your tags might be even more specific. Maybe you have countries as your tags. So you have the United States. You have maybe even you go into a state. So you have Colorado and United States. You can have multiple tags. In fact, you probably will have multiple tags for each blog post. And again, the debate, if you're taking that back to the category discussion, usually you'll assign a post to one category. If you're finding that you're assigning it to multiple categories, you may want to relook at your category structure. Just FYI. Whereas tags, you will assign multiple tags to a post. Another example might be, again, going back to the locations or places with photographers. Whereas Africa, you might have tags be Ethiopia, South Africa, Nigeria, and maybe even the city. So tags, again, are the details. If we go back to our example of where we set up websites as a category, underneath that we had a subcategory for nonprofit. Maybe our tags in that scenario might be, that might be locations as well. Maybe we want to be able to pull up all Colorado nonprofits. So my index or my tag might be Colorado. Maybe it's, I don't know, do we have types of nonprofits? Maybe it's, I don't know, church nonprofits versus community nonprofits, etc. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not real familiar with the nonprofit industry, but you kind of get the idea of what tags are. And you can set up tags as you blog. But you do want to have an idea prior to posting. Again, tags, indirectly affect SEO. It's another way for viewers to navigate your content. And I would say more important than thinking SEO when you're setting up categories and tags, think your audience. What makes sense to them when they jump to your website to navigate down to find what they're looking for, to find what they might be interested in. So think about how your audience, what makes sense to them in navigating your site. To take a look at how to set up tags, again, underneath posts in the dashboard, you'll see tags. And this is my training site where I don't have any tags, but setting up tags would be very similar to how you did set up categories. So let's go back to our idea of websites and nonprofits, and let's say we also want to do our nonprofit websites by location. So there's our tags. Again, just the name of the tag, a slug if you want to. If you don't type in the slug, it'll do what I mentioned earlier. It'll just use what you created without capitalization. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So that's how you set up tags. Now I'm going to show you how to assign categories and tags in the next step. So we've done the first 3 steps, which is setting up categories and setting up tags. The next step is actually writing your blog posts. When you write your blog post, that is when you will assign your category and assign your tags. Now it's, excuse me, it can be easy to forget this, but hopefully you'll remember at least to assign categories because that becomes important. And I will also show you a way to assign a default category. So if you do forget, at least it's assigned a category and not defaulting to the uncategorized category or unassigned category. I'll show you how to add a featured image. Again, this depends on your theme, but usually a featured image will be the little thumbnail that displays when you have an excerpt of your blog post showing up on your front page or on your blog page or on your indexed page. We'll talk a bit about editing a post as well as custom types. And that's a little more advanced topic, but I just want you to be aware of it because you will probably run into it as you're researching blogging in WordPress. All right, so let's look at adding a post. I'm going to go back to this training site. I'm going to go in click on posts. It's going to show all the posts I have set up on this training site. I'm just going to go into one of these. So to go back into a post, you simply click edit. If you're going to create a new post, actually, let me do that. I'm going to click on add new. You put your blog post title here. And this is where you enter your content, blog post. And I'll probably do another webinar on actually creating blog posts and different things to be aware of, but just to note a couple of things. Whatever your title is, that will become part of your URL. So when you're thinking of a blog post title, use something that your website visitor would potentially search by. So if I'm looking for information about Colorado nonprofits, and this is an article about a Colorado nonprofit, in my title I'd probably put maybe the name of the nonprofit organization, say ABC, comma, a Colorado nonprofit. So a Colorado nonprofit, those actually search terms become a part of my blog title. Then I enter my content, any images, etc., formatting my content as I wish. When I'm done entering my content, or even maybe before I enter my content, on your right-hand side, if you scroll down, you may or may not need to scroll down depending on your WordPress install, you're going to see a box for categories. This list will correspond to the categories that we saw when we clicked on categories under posts. And you want to click on one of these to assign this to one of those categories. Okay. And you do have the option to add a new category from this web page. This will jump back to the same window where we added a new category if I was to click on this add new category option. Then down below that is where we add tags. Now you're not going to see a list of tags down here like we do with categories. For tags, you simply start just typing them in because they don't have to necessarily be set up at this point. So maybe I want to assign the Colorado tag here. Maybe it's a government type of nonprofit organization, so I'll type that in. Click on add, and it's going to show those tags that it's assigned to here. Okay, if you want to see a list of tags, you click on this. Now let me go to my own website where I have some of this in action here. Let's go to all posts, and let's go to this top post here. Okay, so here's a category. And when I started this a number of years ago, I had lots of categories. I'll probably be refining this a bit the next few months. And then here's my tags. I'm going to click on this because I have used tags in this, and it's going to show me just a bunch of different tags that I have already set up. So I can choose from this list, or I can add different tags by simply typing them in here. If I choose something from here, so click on it, it's going to put it up here in this list. Okay, so that's how you assign posts to categories and to tags. Let's also look at assigning a featured image, and as well as scheduling and publishing. I think I already mentioned how to assign a featured image. Again, down here on the right hand side, you have a box, set featured image. You simply click on that. That will open up your media library, and you select the image that you would like to have for this post. I would also highly encourage you to put in alt text. Alt text will help SEO. I'll probably do a webinar on SEO sometime in the future. What was this about? I might put in the company name. Maybe this is a logo for the company. And just to emphasize nonprofit again, I'll type it in here in the alternative text. It's going to plug that featured image in at the bottom. That's how you add a featured image. Now, some things by default will take your first image in your blog post as your featured image. Other ones will require you to put a featured image here. So it just depends on your theme. Then finally, I mentioned about scheduling your blog post to go out. Now you can just click publish here, and it will immediately post to your website. Or if you want to schedule it out, next to this option here in the publish box at the top right, you have a published. You can edit where it says publish immediately, and you can set the date on when you want it to go out. If I wanted this to go out sometime in the future, date and time, click OK. Now that sets it to be, sets the date when it will be to be published, but you have to click on the schedule option or the schedule button to actually schedule that. I know I've done this before. I do this option here, and then I forget to click on the schedule, and it doesn't publish on my schedule date because I didn't click on this schedule button. So it's a two-step process. Assign your date and time, and then click schedule. And it will go. Next time I come into WordPress, I'm going to click on Post option. It's going to be sitting right here. Anything that has not been posted will have the dash draft next to it. Simply click on the edit option when I hover over that post, and then get back in here and continue creating that blog post at a later point. Or even if it's a published post, I can come back in here and edit it and then click on publish, and it will update the post on my site. All right, so we talked about scheduling and publishing. We talked about editing a post. Custom post types. I just want to introduce this to you so you're aware of it, because you'll probably run into it as you're researching blogging inside WordPress. I have one of my clients is a real estate firm. And if I go to their dashboard, you're going to notice that I have these different options here on my dashboard, like properties and agents, partners, and real estate. These aren't typical entries you see in the dashboard in a default installation of WordPress. So these are what we call, most of these, not all of these, real estate is an exception, but properties, agents, and partners are what we call custom post types. So because this is for a real estate, the theme I'm using automatically sets up these custom post types. When I click on properties, it already has a form, if you will, to click in information pertaining to that type of, in this case, type of asset, which is a property. Okay. If I click on agents and go into one of these, it has a form of filling out agent information. So I still get this edit box up here typical WordPress editing option. But then following that will be a form or fields that pertain to that type of post. And you can set up these custom post types inside WordPress. There is a plugin that allows you to do that. Actually, several plugins that will allow you to do custom post types. And what that does is it simply creates an entry in the dashboard where it will provide you for the fields that pertain to that type of asset or that type of record, however you want to look at that. So that's custom post types. Just makes it more straightforward at entering information for a specific type of record. Yeah, there's a question there about custom post types and how do we set those up if we want to create some. I'm going to defer that into another webinar. That gets a little bit detailed. At this point, I just want you to be aware that you can do that. It's a wonderful thing. There is a, see if I can think of it. I might have it installed. Plug-in that I do recommend when you're considering custom post types. There's a plugin called Toolset Types is a plugin that will kind of lead you in the right direction. I think Toolset Types used to be WP Types, and then there's actually, I think, now it's a group of maybe 3 plugins that come together. Toolset Types being one, WP Views being another. And WP Views is used to actually view the custom post type. So I would Google that, or just Google custom post type plugin, and you'll come up some others. There's another one that I do recommend. Advanced custom post types is what it's called, or something similar to that. So that kind of gives you at least some direction to explore of setting up custom post types. All right, so we've covered the third step. We started with setting up categories as the first step. Second step was setting up tags. Third step is actually adding the blog post and assigning that blog post to categories and tags, as well as some of these other options to be aware of. And finally, the fourth option is assigning specific blog settings within WordPress. I'm going to show you 3 different screens, if you will, that you need to be aware of when you're blogging on your WordPress website. These are all under the settings option from the dashboard. We're going to go into the reading option, and that's where we set the front page. So I think the best thing is just to go and show you this. Settings, reading. If you're doing a blogging site, you may, and most blogging sites are set this way, you may just want excerpts of your most recent blogs to show up on your front page. If that is true, you're going to select this option under front page displays, show your latest posts. Or you might have what we call a static front page, so you want to define how your home page looks. If that's the case, set up that front page under pages. When you come here on this drop down, you're going to select a static page, and then on this drop down, you're going to select your pages from this list of pages, which one you want to be your home page. And you'll also need to set up a blog post page if you have a static front page. So your blog post page becomes where all your excerpts are inserted. Instead of on your front page, it's going to default to here. Now this blog post page is it's an empty page that you create under pages. Let's see if I can show this to you quickly. I'm going to open up this in a different. Oops, I'm in the wrong site. No, I'm not. Training. Yeah, I may not have this set up properly. Let me see. I play with this site too often. Things get messed up a bit. Yeah, I wonder about I have the blog page. Let's see. Okay. Nice. So this becomes my blog page. Notice these are just excerpts from the blog posts. To see this, it actually shows up under Let's just do a search for this blog. I know it's called blog page. There it is. It's going to show up under pages once you assign it. Over here, it's going to add the dash post page after it when you're under the pages option from the dashboard. And if I go in here, it's just a blank page. And there's not even a section to do any editing. So when you first set this up, there's going to be an editing section here, typical where you enter the content. Just leave that blank. Then go to your reading settings, assign that to your post page. And when you come back here, you won't even see that editing box anymore because it's going to know that these are just for your posts. So that's how you set up your reading settings. You can also specify how many posts to show on that page. There's a question here that just came in, and I just noticed this too. They're noticing that my search engine visibility on this reading settings page is turned on. And that's only because this is a training site. I really don't want search engines indexing this site. I use it for webinars or to help show clients different aspects about WordPress. So it doesn't need to be searched. That's why I have that turned on. That's not something you want to do. You want to leave that turned off. So search engines will index your site so people can find your search engine. Now, the only exception to that might be if you're setting up your site, you don't want to find your site yet. So you might turn that on, but do not forget to turn it back off. So your site will be indexed and found by search engines. All right, let's also look at these other settings. We're going to look at the writing option and the discussion option. Two other things to be aware of when you're setting up your site for WordPress blogging. Let's go under writing. The main thing to be aware of under your writing setting is this one here. It's set your default post category. So if you don't do anything here, by default, it's going to have an uncategorized. It's either uncategorized or unassigned category, and everything will go to there if you don't set up your own category. So be sure to set up your categories, then come into this page and assign your default category. So at least every post is being assigned to a category. And you can see here, I even deleted the default category, which is called, I think, unassigned. And then under discussion, this is where you go to set up your comments. So when you're blogging, you may or may not want to allow comments. There's advantages and disadvantages of having or not having comments. It's really up to you. If you want some audience engagement, I would encourage you to leave comments on. If you don't want that, you can turn that off. And actually, you turn it completely off. There's a plugin called Disable Comments if you want to turn it off for your entire website. But you come in here to set the parameters for comments. And usually I leave this at the default, but just to be aware of this, you can be emailed whenever anyone posts a comment, which might be a good idea so you can respond to it if needed. A comment is held for moderation if it's their first time. Once they fill out their author name, which is turned on here, their subsequent comments, I think, will automatically be posted. But you can control your commenting via these different options here on this page under settings discussion. So those are different settings you need to be aware of when preparing your WordPress website for blogging. All right, I think we're finished as far as the content. Again, just a quick review. We discussed why even bother with blogging, the advantages of doing so, to set up yourself as an authority on the subject or as at least an expertise in a certain area. It also is a great way to connect with your audience. We talked about the different types of blogging, where it's an article, a video, a podcast, photos. And then we talked about the 4 steps of blogging: setting up your categories, setting up your tags, actually adding your blog posts, assigning your blog settings. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send them over. I'm going to be wrapping up for the next minute or two. If you're interested and haven't done so yet, I do have a ebook out there, so I think it's like 44 pages. It also includes a 8-part mini e-course on how to set up a WordPress website. It covers a section on what we talked about this morning, but also talks about installing WordPress, finding themes, setting different options, which plugins to use, etc. So if you're interested in that, don't jump to onwardstudios.com/WP guide to get that, and you'll also get the 8-part free mini e-course with that as well. If you have any other further questions, you can get hold of me during the week. My email is karma@onwardstudios.com. You can also visit my site and contact me on my website. You can also find me on Twitter and Facebook. Onward Studios without the A on both of those. I do have a YouTube channel as well under Onward Studios with the A. All right. I don't see any other questions coming in. Again, I do these WordPress webinars on the first and second Fridays of each month, although today is a 5th Friday, and that's because I couldn't do, I think it was the second Friday of this month, so I pushed it to the 5th Friday for this month. But the next 2 weeks, I'll be doing some more webinars on WordPress, and then I do Photoshop on the 3rd and 4th Fridays. So just jump to my website, and there'll be if you want to sign up for Photoshop, jump to my website and actually watch. You're already getting a notice probably my newsletter each week, and watch for a Photoshop webinar coming up, and you'll be able to sign up for that if you also want to get Photoshop training. All right, that wraps up the content for this morning. Again, thank you to each of you for joining us. I love having you on board. Thank you also for those that turned in some questions and comments. I love the interaction as well. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me on these Friday mornings. So have a great rest of the day and enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next time.